Today's chapter starts, and we see that because of the fear of rumors, Aoning is not going to take his phone back. Vihang also notices this, and he immediately goes to that girl, and takes the phone from her, and says this is my phone. Where Songsha does not understand anything, and Vihang comes to him quietly, and gives him that phone, and says I think this is yours. After taking his phone, Aoning says thank you to him, and Vihang leaves from there. And Aoning is thinking that I should have been more careful. Now in the next scene, we see Vihang, who had come to the rehab with his teacher, where the lady tells him, you always stay with the teacher. This way you will not get any girlfriend. Here, the teacher starts shouting at him and says, you said absolutely right. Anyway, he can attract as many girls as he wants. But he never goes near anyone. On which that lady tells him, you are acting very good. You have also not asked me for a date till today. On which the teacher cannot say anything. And we see, as soon as Vihang sits in the car, his teacher says get out of here quickly. Here, we again see the teacher who tells Vihang that I am very lucky that I met that girl. Vihang, if you ever find someone you love, then never let her go. Here, the teacher keeps talking about his own things. Then he sees that Vihang is looking somewhere else and tells him, what are you doing? Then we look outside, where Aoning had come to meet that pretty lady, where that lady was giving him a gift. Seeing which Vihang gets very angry, and the teacher also notices all this and immediately says, are you looking at that beautiful girl? But this is quite bad, because she is already married. But how bad that 2 years ago her husband passed away. Now, she has only her one child, but still you should not raise your eyes towards her. Where Vihang says I was just looking at her. This does not mean that I will immediately go to impress her. On which his teacher says, you do not look at anyone, right? That is why I got quite surprised. Here Vihang tells him, you know quite a lot about that girl. Who was that boy who was with her? Where his teacher does not know anything about this, and he says maybe some relative of hers. And then the teacher says, but both of them do not look alike, so they cannot be relatives. Which makes Vihang even more angry, and he immediately applies the brake. Because of which the teacher gets scared and says, what are you doing all this? But we see Vihang still quite annoyed. Now, we see Aoning, who had come back to his room. It had rained on the way, and he had got wet. He thinks that I borrowed Lady Kanfai's clothes to save from rain. I have to return this then. As soon as he reaches his room, he meets his friends there. He goes to talk to them. Then Bao tells him something quite bad has happened. And Shengyan shows him a post which was made on the school forum, where as soon as Aoning sees it, he gets quite surprised, because in that post it was written that one student of our school who is studying on scholarship has an iPhone. Should such a rich child be given scholarship? And here, people are talking about Aoning only in giving a lot of abuses, where we see Aoning who cannot say anything. He has got quite scared, and says, after all, how did this happen? Now, the next scene, we see Lady Kanfai, who was giving a lift to one friend of Vihang, but someone was following them. Here Kanfai says, is he your boyfriend who is coming behind us? On which Vihang's friend says, come, let us trouble him. And she immediately starts teasing him. Now after some time, we see Vihang gets down and is taking out his helmet, and his friend comes and asks him, why were you following us? On which Vihang says, who said I was following you? On which that girl says, then were you following Lady Kai Kai? Where? Vihang asks her, how do you know her? On which that girl tells him, have you fallen in love at first sight with her? But she is already married. On which Vihang says, I know. And then that girl tells, by the way, Lady Kanfeng is nowadays seen with some college boy. And as soon as she remembers the university name, she recalls that Vihang also studies there and asks Vihang, do you know about this? On which Vihang tells yes, I know that boy. Now, in the next scene, we see Vihang doing training, where he was not able to focus at all. His boss also asks about him, so Vihang says I am just distracted. Here his coach also teases him and says are you thinking about that pretty lady? On which Vihang says after all, why are all of you talking about her? Only, I'm not interested in her at all. On this his coach says okay, do not lie to me. Here Vihang tells him, I am not like everyone. In this world, people show one thing and are something else. Animals are better than humans. At least they do not lie to me. On this, the teacher says, if you look into humans' eyes, you will know truth and lie. And we see Vihang, who starts remembering Aoning, and he is not able to understand anything. Here then, we see Aoning is messaging Vihang and calling him for class, and the coach also sees and understands that it was that glasses boy and starts asking about him and says he is quite good. Right, on which Vihang gets up and leaves and says you have nothing to do with this. Here in the next scene, we see Aoning, who is thinking Vihang neither came to class nor is replying to my message. After all, what is going on here? Then his eyes fall and we see Vihang is coming from the front. Here Aoning goes to talk to him, but Vihang, seeing the gift kept near him, says, this looks quite expensive, on which Aoning tells, this is not mine, I have to return it. Then we see, suddenly Vihang tells him, so are you going to return this expensive cloth along with your iPhone? If you have so much money that you can buy clothes and iPhone, then why do you study with scholarship? Do you not think that someone needy should get your scholarship instead of you? Because of which Aoning just keeps looking at him in surprise. But Aoning does not say a single word to him, and quietly leaves from there. Here only Vihang is running in his mind, and he thinks this is the first time Vihang has looked at me with so much hate. And Aoning looks quite disappointed, and he thinks, after all, how can he say such bad things to me when he does not know anything about me? Here Aoning is looking at that phone and thinking that all the trouble started after taking this phone. I will return it. Here, then, in the next scene, we see Aoning returns Kanfai's phone and buys a cheap phone for himself, but he was quite happy with it too. But as soon as he turns on his new phone, there were many messages from Kanfai, because she was asking him, after all, why did you return the phone? If there is any problem, then you can tell me. Here Aoning starts thinking that I have troubled Lady Kanfai also. Here then, we see Kanfai calls him, and Aoning tells her that I have bought a new phone. So I was returning your phone. On this, Kanfai asks, was there any problem with my phone? On this, Aoning says no, it is just that I study in college on scholarship. So if people see a new phone with me that too so expensive, then they will make up things. On which Kanfai asks him, has someone said something to you? On which Aoning says no, nothing like that. I just did not feel right taking that gift. On which Kanfai gets very angry and says in anger, are you stupid? I gave you one of my old second-hand phones. You returned that and bought a new phone for yourself. Do you not think you are wasting money like this? You should save your money for your studies and food. You are just a student now. You cannot spend so uselessly. This Aoning says I understand. And in his mind only Vihang's words were running, where he had seen him with a lot of anger, and he cannot say anything. But we see Kanfai, who immediately becomes calm, and says you should not pay attention to what others say. They do not know anything about you. The one who is just saying bad about you is cheap. He only knows how to bully others. You have not done anything bad. After this Aoning says, I understood your words, and he says thank you to her and ends the call. Then Bao comes there and says, you bought a new phone again. On this Aoning gives excuse, my old phone got lost. On which Bao says that was quite a good phone. Then Shengyan hits Bao and asks Aoning, you bought a new phone, do you have money to eat? Because all these new Aoning's financial condition, that sometimes the poor guy cannot even afford food. But Aoning assures him that everything is fine, he has money. Here, then Shengyan tells him, you always do this, you never tell us about your problems. We are your friends. We also want to help you. So whenever you have shortage of food or you have any problem, you can come and tell us. And Bao also tells him the same and says, I am always ready to feed you food. Now, in the next scene, we see someone comes there and throws the bag, because of which Aoning got quite scared. And we see Vihang comes there. But after seeing Vihang, Aoning's mood gets bad and he becomes quite sad. Where Bao starts talking to Vihang, but Sengen pulls him away. Meanwhile, Aoning, sitting behind, is thinking it will be good if he does not see me. Otherwise, it will become quite awkward. Now, in the next scene, we see the teacher who was teaching. Then he sees Vihang and says, "You handsome boy who sometimes attends class, give me the answer of that question." On which Vihang says, "I do not know." The teacher gets angry. Here, the teacher asks Vihang a question. A case of bullying and sexual assault has come in school, where both victims are boys, so tell, what is your opinion on this? After all, how should we handle this case? On which Vihang says the answer is simple. We should immediately finish that boy who did the assault. Here all the people start supporting him, and Bao tells Aoning he should have been a superhero, not a lawyer. And Aoning starts laughing on this. So Vihang starts staring at him, and Aoning gets quite scared and says, "I was not laughing at you." Then we see Bao, who asks Vihang for lunch. But Aoning was feeling quite awkward, and he thinks that if I am here, Vihang will not go with us. Then Vihang first looks at him and then says, "Okay, I will come with you." Because of which Aoning gets quite surprised, and Aoning is looking towards Vihang in quite confusion. And right here, today's chapter ends.